The Rebel Capitalist Show.
We got a lot to talk about. I mean, this week we got the Fed coming out. Are they going to do 75? Are they going to do 100? We got the, I think the GDP numbers come out this week as well, and some more interesting stuff. So what are your thoughts on all the data points that we're going to be receiving?
Yeah, like you said, George, it's not like there's a shortage of interesting topics that we can cover. We got macroeconomics, we got monetary economics, and I'm sure we've got some political stuff, social stuff we can get into too. But overall, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of surprise here, at least nowadays. It might have been a surprise to people last year, but I think it's the idea of recession has finally is pretty much accepted, certainly in most of the public's mind. I mean, there's going to be some holdouts at the Fed, politics, government.
Not with the White House. Did you see him change the definition of recession today?
Well, I hate to say, hey, hold on a second. I actually agree with them.
Okay.
In one respect, because this technical definition of recession, that's not really a definition. I mean, it's sort of a rule of thumb.
But I would say their timing is
a
little suspicious here.
No question. But I think, in my mind, it's like the two negative quarters in a row is sort of the warm-up act here. That's kind of the real scary thought. Well, they're saying, hey, that stuff behind us, we've had two negative quarters, or likely had two negative quarters in a row. We find out on Thursday. To me, that's not the recession. That's not the thing that the markets are worried about. They're worried about that as the opening act to what follows the rest of this year. So you think about, why are curves so upside down? We're starting this year in the negative 2 straight quarters, and the market is still worried about what's ahead of us, not what's behind us. So if the White House wants to litigate, the technical definition of recession, that's fine, and I would agree with them. But that's beside the point, which is probably their point, is to another distraction. Let's not pay attention to the recession. Let's pay attention to something else. I guess inflation.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying that what the curves are telling us, and we'll get into that, or what they're warning us about, isn't necessarily 2 consecutive quarters of negative real GDP growth. There's something going on that's far more risky out there. There's something that has a lot more downside, maybe is a better way to say it.
Yeah, it's more than just, hey, or we're going to have to debate about the technical definition. This is not about technicalities here. This is about some real world phenomena that is likely to have a serious downside risk to it, not just downside risk in the economy as well as the markets.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, I know that we'll call it recession or black swan event is the same. I mean, you could say maybe 100 years ago we had a COVID type event, so maybe in the next 100 years we'll get something like that. But rarely do we see the same act play out 2 times in a row as far as a financial crisis. So what as far as probabilities, what do you think the financial crisis looks like that the curves are warning us about?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, George. If you look at, say, for example, the Eurodollar futures curve, last week it hit a level of inversion we hadn't seen since September of 2007, which to me, I mean, that's something that should really ring some alarm bells, because September 2007 was after the global financial crisis had already begun, and it was mere weeks away from the Fed's first rate cut. So the Eurodollar futures market, in order to get us into that shape, is inverted about 125 basis points between the top and the near-term spread to, I think it was December 2008, maybe September 2008 from the September 2007 contract. So relatively speaking, to get that depth of inversion, we had to already be inside the financial crisis. It had already begun, and the Fed was already about to do its rate cutting.
Right.
And so that's what we see in the Eurodollar futures curve today. Now, I hesitate to make that comparison, not because I want to compare curves, but as you said, this isn't going to be another 2008. We're not going to see a replay of the first global financial crisis, because a lot of things are very different. For example, the banking system, individual banks, we're not going to see another Lehman Brothers. We're not going to see another Bear Stearns. There won't be a rash of nationalized banks across the world, because by and large, most banks have indeed fortified their own balance sheets to the point where they're going to be able to withstand whatever crisis, whatever problem we're about to hit, whatever it is that the market is actually really worried about. And it's not, the past 6 months. So what the market is saying is that there's something underlying, some deflationary monetary details that are significant enough and substantial enough that they're maybe equivalent to what we saw in the late part of 2007, 15 years ago. So something beyond your garden variety recession, something beyond your garden variety, oh, okay, there's a little bit of a illiquidity in certain markets, but not necessarily a replay of 2008. So something in the same category.
Yeah, you know, the way I picture it in my mind is like Hoover Dam. You ever been to Hoover Dam?
I haven't, no.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, you got to go. But I've been there several times because my mom lives in Vegas. And I just, if Hoover Dam was needed maintenance, let's say, and it started to crack, you get the water starting to shoot out of the cement, let's say, in a certain point, and it starts gushing out, and that's the GFC. And then we take some cement to kind of patch that one area. But now it's not like we're going to see water gushing out of that same area. There's going to be a different crack in the dam that's going to show up, where the curves are telling us water is going to start gushing out, but we just don't really know where exactly in the dam. But the problem is the same. The core problem, the root problem is the same, and that is that the dam is broken and we need a new dam. And where I'm going with that, Jeff, is and correct me if I'm wrong, but the problem, the main issue with the GFC is that the Eurodollar system broke down. And the main issue today is that the Eurodollar system is still broken, just like that dam is still structurally flawed, but we see the water gushing out of another area.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest point here is that, as you good analogy, George, the dam is still broken and we never really fixed it. We stopped the water sort of leaking, or at least we stopped the public's ability to see the water leaking. We kind of hid that for the last 15 years, but intermittently along the way, we've seen new cracks appear, smaller leaks appear. But if we go by what the markets are telling us now, this is probably the most dangerous point we've seen since 2007, the pre-crisis era. Now, what exactly does that mean going forward? It's tough to tell, because it's impossible to predict how these things go. But we do have some reasonable idea of what's going on underneath the surface, monetarily speaking. And it's the same song and dance. It's the same old tale from 2007 and 2008. Everybody got the wrong idea about what happened the first time, thinking it was about subprime mortgages and reckless Wall Street lending. Those were just symptoms of the bigger problem, or the bigger issue, which still remains, which is an inherently flawed monetary system that just doesn't work. And at the first sign of trouble, it doesn't just, take a little bit of risk off the table. Dealers instead just completely exit markets and leave them completely illiquid, which creates all sorts of contagion and knock-on feedback effects.